Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs, our 100th episode.
Dun dun dun! Fanfare, confetti.
Mark, it has been amazing doing this for 100 episodes now.
I know it doesn't seem like we've been doing it this long, but apparently we have been. Right?
Apparently we have, and it's been a wild 100 episodes. I remember back when we got started, when Carol urged the two of us to talk to each other and maybe do a podcast and see how it turns out.
Yeah.
One of the things he said was, try it for 10 episodes. If you can make it 10 episodes, you'll probably last a little bit longer than that. So Carol, here's to you. We've now made it 10 times that.
Yes, we have.
And I gotta say, it's been an interesting 100 episodes. We've talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we have, and we've gotten different perspectives. We both come from a development background, but just different experiences, and kind of focusing on different technologies. So it's been fun. I've learned a lot just hanging out with you, and it's been fun chatting.
I've definitely learned a lot. It kind of goes into it's been an interesting week.
It has been.
It has been. We record a week ahead of when the show actually airs, for those who don't know. So it is currently Thursday. This Monday, the previous Monday, Google dropped the news that they were sunsetting. We'll use that euphemism. The Actions on Google Conversational Actions platform within 1 year. Mm-hmm. And this is largely the platform that I've mostly been talking about for the past 100 episodes.
Yeah, it has been. And that's kind of like part of the thing that drew us together is you have a different perspective. You've got a lot more experience on the Google side of things. I have some, but not as much. And me mostly starting out on the Alexa side of things. And so, but things have changed quite a bit over the years since we started, and this last year, and then this big announcement this last week.
Yeah, but and even so, I think one of the things we had talked about a lot for the past bunch of episodes was it felt like voice was slowing down. It didn't feel like there was a lot that was coming out. There was a lot that was really newsworthy. Mm-hmm. We kind of settled into a groove and we're cruising for a while. And then last week, we said this. All sorts of stuff is going on. So It's always exciting. It seemed for a while that things had quieted down when it came to voice, and it seems like stuff is happening again.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of fun. I like seeing that. I like seeing when the new version of something comes out and kind of checking out, see what's going on,
and while I was editing it, and I was editing this particular segment right after Google's announcement, I sat there staring at it going, well, yeah, we said things were going to change, and things are changing.
And they have, yeah.
And they have. So, I feel like 100 episodes is a good time to kind of look back on the past 100 episodes of the stuff that we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Maybe look back a little bit further into, how voice has evolved. And then kind of at the same time is look forward. What are we going to do next? Now that with conversational actions going away, what is that going to mean for the Google platform, for the industry, and what can people expect to see for the next 100 episodes?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good topic. It's a great topic for our 100th episode. It's just kind of a little look back and look forward. Yeah, sounds great.
So, one of the first kind of ironic things to me is our very first episode. I feel like we kind of jumped in, and we didn't really talk much about ourselves. We didn't really talk much about broad concepts. We dove in on two particular, very specific technologies. And that was on the Alexa side, it was called,
Quick links.
right. And on the Google side at the time, they were called action links. And since then, they've been renamed to assistant links. And now they're essentially on the deprecated list, along with the rest of conversational actions. But I feel like that set an important tone for us, because we weren't, yes, we would eventually talk about big abstract terms and concepts, but we also focused on important things. How do we do things? How much have you seen quick links out there these days?
I've used them in a number of projects, and I've seen them around. Not as much as I would expect. I don't think that they're really a secret, but I don't know that people are putting kind of that extra little effort into being able to launch your skill, in this case, from a web link. Though I find it would be very useful to do. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of scratching my head on why I'm not seeing it more out in the ecosystem, but it is very handy. How about you?
Well, I mean, I don't think I ever saw an action link or an assistant link. And I think at least part of the reason was there were implementation details about it that prevented it from being widely used on all of the platforms. It wouldn't launch on smart displays, for example. So you could launch it to a smart speaker and you could launch it on your phone, but you couldn't launch it to a smart display. So that kind of limited a little bit.
Limiting.
Yeah. On the other hand, I find it really disappointing, because I think, at the time we were coming up with things like, mailing lists that would send out quick links of, here's how you can jump right into the skill and view the high score table, or,
right.
Haven't seen you in a week. Here's where you can link directly and pick up your game again, or, all sorts of different things that we could have done with it. If you've got a puzzle, a game that has multiple puzzles, we've launched a new puzzle. Here's the link to that puzzle.
Here's the link to that puzzle. Yeah.
Right. One of the things when we built our action is that I really wanted to be able to have an assistant link that linked to this week's episode or linked to a particular search term. But since it wasn't reliably working, that wasn't a feature that we ever rolled out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's one of the features that are out there that have a ton of uses, but got very little
untapped potential there.
Yeah. I feel like there was at least one. There were one or two skills at least that I feel like used it really effectively, that would like redirect you to a page, and when you were finished with that page, it would redirect you back into the conversation somehow using them. Was that something you did, or I don't remember the details anymore now.
Yeah, I know it is kind of hard to remember the specifics on where I've seen it, but yeah, I've used it mostly as just a way to like advertise on Facebook or Twitter and have a direct link where they can click it and then either get a notification, which is one of the things that happens on the Alexa side, or you can choose a specific device to just go ahead and launch it on. So that's where I was seeing it, as opposed, instead of sending a link to the skill store, I was sending a link to go ahead and just immediately invoke the skill.
Right.
So
I feel like, for example, one of the examples that comes to mind now, I feel like, is Sleepjar had quick links to a number of different audio specifically. So it's not just it was starting it up, but they provided links directly into specific sounds that you could listen to. And that's a really effective use of it.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's go back. I want to just kind of talk. I think I might have mentioned this before, but I started developing for Alexa specifically. I discovered that it existed in 2016. and started, figuring it out and realized, well, I know JavaScript. I don't necessarily know Node.js, but let's learn that. And I don't really know all the AWS services, but let's learn Lambda and then DynamoDB and S3 and whatever else that we've had to learn over the years. So, one of the things that's happened to me over the years since 2016 is kind of retooling away from .NET, C#, that enterprise software, Microsoft SQL Server, and web, kind of from a perspective of how you would do, Microsoft like ASP.NET and all that stuff, towards more Node.js, backend, voice applications. So that's kind of been a retooling on my side of things, and then just growing in my knowledge of different things in AWS. So that's been kind of a change that I've experienced. And I did have an advantage when I first started out, that certain things happened in the right order, and I was selected as an Alexa champion in 2017, which led to my first startup in voice opportunity. Great in the aspect that I learned a whole bunch about how to create skills on a regular basis, and multimodal as soon as they came out, and just a lot of different things. First startup experience wasn't good on some other levels. I felt like, I was being taken advantage of or undervalued. And that led to some issues, but looking on the positive side of things, that was an opportunity to kind of take another step in. Then I kind of had to take a step out because there weren't necessarily opportunities for me. And then I got to put my foot back in again.
So we're doing the
another
hokey pokey
startup
with voice. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of was. And, I was doing stuff on the side, trying to learn and grow more on things and refine my skills until, now I've been at Rain Agency for a year and a half, and it's just been a really good opportunity. Lots of new things, lots of exposure. We'll kind of talk about that when we get to the forward facing, but 30 plus years in software development, it's a constantly learning process, but it's changed over the years of where I focused. I was really focused just on Alexa, and then I had a project where we also wanted to do a Google Action, which then led me to Jovo, which then led me to all the experiences that I have with that. So there's been a lot of things, and kind of in there a little bit, I created a number of capsules for Bixby using Jovo as well. So I've got exposure to a number of different voice assistants that allowed you to write custom applications for them, and kind of figured that out. What's been your experience, kind of looking back?
Looking back over that time, in some ways it's in some ways it's similar, and in some ways it's different. A lot of my exposure, my broadening, has actually come from my day job. Yeah. But there's definitely been elements to working with the assistant that have gotten me onto interesting different paths. It certainly prompted me to do more with the Google Cloud Platform. I'd always done some. I had a little exposure there, but it got me learning more and more and more and more. I think also for me, the big learning experiences that I got were more around, how do I build things that I knew other people were going to be using without my supervision? So a lot of stuff that I do at work, we're a pretty close-knit company. So stuff that I do, my coworkers all know about it, and we all pick up what each other is doing. Here, when I started work on multivocal, my kind of goal for it was, this was going to be a library that was out there. And yeah, I'd be contributing to it, but I didn't want it to be my project. I wanted this to be a community project.
Yeah.
And, there was a lot that I kind of knew in my head that it would need to do that. And I still underestimated how hard that was going to be to do it right. And I'm not sure I have done it right. I feel like there's a lot that I learned, and a lot that I'm still learning about how do I create a general purpose library that serves the needs for more than what I'm doing. How do I build something so that somebody else can pick it up and hopefully pick up the documentation that got written for it and get started. I feel like the other big thing that I really learned over the past 100 episodes plus have really been the power of community.
Yeah.
When I got started in voice, I saw it as this really, really tiny, narrow thing. There was Google and there was Amazon, and I was on the Google track, and I was building this community in Google, with people who were going to be using Google. And I was answering questions on Stack Overflow and building a community there, and answering questions on Twitter and building the community there. And when Voice Lunch hit, I kind of realized, whoa, there's a world out there beyond, these little narrow tracks,
Yeah.
and there's conversation designers, and there's, all sorts of other resources to work with. And what I hope we've done with Two Voice Devs is made it clear that all of these other roles are important and valuable.
Yes. Key.
While still at the same time keeping our focus on developers. One of the things that is really neat has been that I get every so often, we will get comments on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and the person will say something like, yeah, I'm not a developer, but I follow your show to understand what's going on. And I'm thrilled when I read that, because we're honestly trying to do stuff for developers, but I'm really, really glad that other people in the broader voice community find what we're saying is valuable. So thank you to all of you who tune in.
Yeah, we'll say thank you towards the end as well. But
a number of times, I'm sure.
A big part of us being able to do 100 episodes has been the support of the community in general. And you've mentioned, Voice Lunch, Voice Global, the different conferences that, Voice Summit, Project Voice, different people that we've met on Twitter and LinkedIn and just through social media. Some people I've never met in person. There's just a lot of opportunities and people I've met through open source projects. Like you had said before, I've done more for open source over the last 4 or 5 years than I did my whole career. And some of them have been projects that I've worked on, and like Speech Markdown, like you and Multivocals, like I really want to do this right, and I don't want it to be just my project. I want it to be a project that other people use, and in some cases that's been true. And I've written plugins for Jovo 3 and understood Jovo 4, and writing pull requests for the core framework in Jovo, and new plugins for Jovo 4, and sample projects and starters. And there's just a lot of different things that I've been able to, just work on. And it's all about being part of a community and sharing and contributing and giving back and being positive to others, and, kind of helping when somebody's down, then, help them back up again. And it's just been really great. So go ahead.
No, one of the great things also about working with the community is this flow of ideas that we start to develop.
Yeah.
So that when we're in Voice Lunch or when we're on LinkedIn and we're kind of, exchanging ideas. And one of the things people have noted about you and I on these shows is that we have this great rapport and this very upbeat, and we positively feed off each other. And
yeah,
and it's true. And I think that's what, you've become a great friend over the past couple of years. But I think it's also important to note that this is the kind of dynamic that really, really good engineering organizations have.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that you can get people who can disagree on things and agree on others and argue and debate and discuss, very much like what I think we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that, you're coming up with better and better ideas. And you keep taking those ideas and you keep hammering on them. So, and that's I think is the kind of thing that we discuss here. And I think there's no better illustration of that than our series of, at this point, I believe it is 7 episodes that we've talked about CMS issues.
Yeah.
It's so many episodes that we've dedicated a playlist on YouTube to the subject. And this grew out of conversations that you and I had kind of had informally.
Mhm.
And we've had on Voice Lunch a couple of times informally. And Peter Nahn and Andrew kind of chimed in, and then we just launched it, launched talking about it. And again, from the perspective of what we as developers care about this. Why do we as developers care about this? How do we as developers build this?
Yeah, and I think that will continue on. I think it is still it's not just like a hot topic today and gone tomorrow. I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen in voice content management systems and in frameworks in general that going forward I think will continue, and we'll continue to see some improvements and new ideas coming in and new products, and even going to some of the no code tools that I haven't seen touched in a while and looking at them. I was looking at something today and I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize they had this in here, and just the things that they're evolving. So even though the tool itself is focused towards non-devs, I always think about the devs that are building this and how, they're working with, product managers and interfacing with other people so that the designers and the users that they're targeting will have a great experience with the software and be able to accomplish what they're doing. And they're part of the community too, and we learn from them and they learn from us, and so it's just
and
really
before we go into the going forward, I feel like the other thing that I really want to kind of highlight, I hope, about what we've done the past 100 episodes is we do talk about a lot of technical stuff, but I hope what we've gotten across to people who are just joining the field, either the voice field or the software engineering field, is that you belong here. You're welcome here. We want you and we need you here.
Yeah, if you came from some other background but want to be more technical, great. If you want to bring your experience from screenwriting or from English or from linguistics or whatever, if you want to bring all those different experiences in, then there's a place for you. There's
right.
Things that we could only do if you contribute.
And if you're a software developer, if this is if you're just out of school or just out of boot camp or whatever, if you're just getting into this development field, Voice is a great place. And I still think Voice is a great place. And we very much, one of the things we discussed a couple of times is what our career path looked like, and how we got from where we started into this voice development today. And I really hope it highlights to a lot of people that there are multiple paths. And I hope when we talked about, discussing, here's what this technology means, and here are some of the basics, and here's some of the terminology, that all of those episodes, I hope you really get the sense that, you can learn this. I was
mostly self-taught. I did graduate in management information systems, but it was more of a business side and not as technical. But I've been hands-on on software development since I learned how to program myself, and saving things to 5.25-inch floppies, or so I've been doing this for a long time. But it doesn't matter. There are no roadblocks from my perspective. I'm not here to gatekeep at all. If you want in this field, for whatever reason, and if you're the type of person that wants to work hard during the week and do something completely different on the weekend, great.
Yeah.
There's no reason that everybody has to be the same. You can contribute how you want to contribute, and you are welcome.
Definitely, I completely agree. I'd like to hope that programming in general is a welcoming community, and I certainly want to say that I think Voice is a welcoming community.
Yeah, and we're here at least doing our part to try to make it as welcoming as possible. And if you're new and you don't feel like you've been welcomed either to the development or the Voice community, let us say welcome. you're here, and we're happy that you're here.
Very much so. So it's been an interesting 100 episodes. I think the next 100 are going to be even more interesting, to be honest. But they're going to be different.
Yeah.
We are, one of the there were two sessions at Voice Global this week. And I caught one, I did not catch the other. But one was titled basically, What's Next with Voice 2.0? And the other one was essentially titled, What's Next with Voice 3.0? And I thought that was interesting that we had two people, basically, I'm assuming they both said this, similar perspectives, saying, okay, we've now helped people understand that you can talk to machines with Assistant and Alexa. And now it's time to take that and go the next step.
Right.
And I think with Google essentially changing their focus, they're saying where they think the next step for them is going to be anyway. So I guess now let's kind of turn to what do we think we're going to be talking about next? Because as you pointed out to me, when we started this, it was very much a, hi, I'm Alexa and I'm Google, and we're going to talk about voice.
Yep.
And I think things are going to change a lot.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Google's changing their focus, maybe pivoting more towards their strength of the Android operating system and mobile. And that's going to be, voice plus mobile. And that's, right. You see that as well. They're keeping their smart displays and their smart speakers, and you'll still be able to ask what the weather is and play music and the things that you typically, could do before. But it's in some ways similar to what Apple's doing. They have a smart speaker device, and you can play music and you can ask certain things, but it really is about voice and mobile. Yeah. And not that Alexa's ignoring that either, because there's definitely new things that are coming out with, I'm on this smart speaker device and I want to send it to my phone, or how can we have this interaction be better? So it's not that they're ignoring it. It's just that, iOS and Android have mobile platforms that are very, strong ecosystems with a marketplace and stuff. And so they're trying to play to those strengths.
Well, and I think that's what it is that everyone wants to make sure they have a platform and that they play to their strengths on the platform. Google has Android and it's playing to its strength on Android. Amazon has Alexa. That's its platform. Yeah. And I think it's going to be playing to its strength on Alexa. And I think it's a good thing. I think, when on the Google side, I can't imagine they're going to not have an answer for what goes on smart displays and smart speakers for long. And I have no insight on this, to be honest, but it just seems it just seems very strange that there isn't going to be something coming. And I don't know what shape that is. I mean, we know that it's still going to be accepting, it's still going to be searching websites for content. They consider those third-party actions. It's still going to be accepting video and audio streams. It sees those as actions. And the information about how to do that is expanding and opening up a bit.
Smart home stuff?
There's definitely smart home stuff. And both platforms are going to see an explosion in that, in a few months when it comes to Matter. Certainly, I think Google will have to do something to keep it growing on these platforms. And I don't know what that is, but I'm in some ways kind of excited to find out.
Yeah, and I don't think the devices are going to go anywhere, because if I have 5 Alexa devices in my home, why would Amazon not want me to have those devices and be able to take advantage of even if it's just the retention and the feedback, or getting notifications for orders that I place through Amazon. There's lots of different reasons why any footprint that you can have in the home with a device is something that is
Sure,
ground that they're not going to want to give up.
you want to encourage people to stay in your ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I think I think at the same time, though, we're going to start seeing this expansion of independent or third party or whatever we want to call them assistants. We're no longer going to see the assistant focused voice sphere.
Yeah, so here at Rain we call them owned assistants or custom assistants, and they could pop up in lots of different places. It could be a website that you're able to tap to talk, or even potentially do a wake word to invoke. It could be an Android or an iOS app that has an assistant built into that. Or it could be custom hardware. You could, a speaker, a screen, or some other form factor that has the ability to, we talk a lot about brands, like, is it Nike? Is it so-and-so? Is it, so the brands that we would know, but, what would be a custom assistant that would be special purpose built for a brand? And what would, why would you want that? What would be the information that you would use? And there's lots of advantages of having, or why you'd want to build your own custom assistant as opposed to building on these other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we can investigate some of those. Like, now I contain the whole pipeline. I own that. So the data that's coming in as far as what people are speaking or what are they asking for is something that is owned by the brand, and they can start looking at that information, figuring out what things are being asked that they aren't handling. And that could be new products, or it could be new services. It could be just an extension of the assistant to handle additional features. Anything that would get more use and more retention and build a better relationship with their customer.
I think the question that I have about these assistants, and I think it's great. I think it's important, and I think it's an important next step. But I feel like my question kind of comes down to two things. As a user, why do I want this? And there are probably reasons, and but that's got to be an answer that anybody doing it gives. As a user, why do I want your assistant versus Alexa? And as a developer, I want to know, how do I integrate with your assistant if I want to?
Yeah, or even how do I build a custom assistant? So I think in some cases there will be specific reasons why we want a specific brand or a specific, a custom assistant for something. But in some cases, they're just going to be in the things that we buy. I don't have a washer or a dryer that has an assistant in it, but I could see, instead of the knobs and all trying to figure out that I'm doing this cycle and for this long, that I could just say, this is what I'm washing a load of whites. And they're extra dirty, or I don't know, whatever.
Sure. But
right?
at the same time, I want to be able to, on the other side of the house, say, hey, washing machine, are you done yet?
True.
So, it does come down to what's the user experience going to be like for all of these things?
Yeah. So, if I have a custom assistant built into my washing machine, but I have an Alexa in the den, and I want to know what the status is, then there needs to be some communication back and forth between those. And that type of integration, I think, is definitely things that we're going to see in the future. We could take a specific assistant and follow it, from your home to your car, to your jog, to your, wherever. I think that's one type of integration, but then there's this other integration across devices in your home or like in public and in private. So those are types of things I'm sure we'll see in the future.
And I'm also going to say that as the developer side of this, I want to be able to write the app that talks to the washing machine to know how much water is it using, how much energy is it using, is it working efficiently. And
when was the last time it was maintained?
Right.
When was it? Yeah.
certainly I can see as a developer wanting to do that kind of integration and making sure there was a way that I could build an assistant that talked to your assistant. And here's where we shout out to the Open Voice Network, because
Correct.
they're asking questions like this already and trying to make sure that somebody is at least thinking about the answers.
Yeah, definitely shout out to them. It's hard because when you're working in dev and in tech, you're trying to in some cases go deep and try to figure out exactly how do I do this situation, and you don't always have the luxury or the ability to figure out, well, how can we do this across devices or across
what's a bigger picture to this?
Yeah, definitely a bigger
right
picture.
And I think that's kind of, again, looking kind of back a little bit, I think that was one of the problems that has plagued both Amazon and Google, is they both wanted to get out there, and their first thought was, if we have an app platform, we will be able to answer a whole bunch of questions that we can't anticipate right now. And I think what both of them discovered was, there are a lot more questions that we didn't know how to answer, so we keep needing to update things to make it so people can answer them. And
Right.
I think Google eventually said, we already have a platform that does this. And I think going forward, for me, that's going to be one of the interesting challenges, is I now need to interact with a whole new community in addition to the community that I've been very, very comfortable with for the past few years.
Yeah.
So I now need to reach out to people who have worked very hard on making their screens work very fast, and have improved keyboard input and button input, and that's been their focus for, I don't know how long, however long Android has been out now. It's been 15 years or so. And now coming to them and saying, hey, we also have this other tool now, and here are the lessons that we've learned over the past 5 years about building these things, and here's how you should start thinking about them as well.
Yeah.
Here's how to take the lessons that we learned and apply them to the lessons you already have on your platform. And I think that's going to be an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with folks here, as well as Android folks.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about like when I first learned Alexa, it was like, okay, I need to learn how to use the Alexa Skills Kit SDK, and this is how you take utterances and intents that Alexa gives you, and how you do your business logic, and this is where you store your data in a database. And it was really all about, how do I create an Alexa skill? And I was able to take that same approach. It's like, well, how do I build a Google action or a conversational action now? How do I build a Bixby capsule? Right. So you're able to take a look at and kind of like, how do I build this app on this platform? Whereas now, when you're looking at custom assistant, you have to understand the whole thing. It's like, okay, wake word happens on the device. Lots of different possible providers to do for a wake word. Let's look at cost. Let's look at functionality, and maybe like interoperability with other components. Then you look at, okay, well, I've got either audio input or text input, and I need to figure out what the intents and entities are for that. And that would be your automatic speech recognition, or your natural language understanding, or your
right. I mean, even it even goes down to saying, well, we have pre-built ASRs from various different places.
Yep.
Do we build our own ASR? Do we have enough training material to build an ASR?
Or are there plenty of providers out there that you pick a
right.
Speechly or a Houndify or a Lex or a Dialogflow?
Right. Do we go find the best one for our purposes and incorporate with that? And and then similarly for the NLU, do we which one do we pick? Which one works best in our environment?
Yeah, is it Raza? Is it is it Lex as well? Because you can, some of these platforms allow you to take either text input or audio input. Like like Lex, and so that's our SLU, our speech language understanding piece. But then, what are the advantages of having the ASR on the client versus on the server? What's the cost associated with those?
Well, but I think also the exciting part is that we also then get to say things like, well, okay, since I have complete control of this audio, can I do things like sentiment analysis? Can I do things like tone analysis?
Exactly.
What now, since I can get access to additional stuff, what else can I do? And then the flip side of that is, okay, I'm now getting access to all of this additional stuff. How do I keep it secure? How do I assure the user's privacy? What risks have I just taken on?
Right.
And how do I make sure we earn the trust of the user and not abuse that?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so you've got the whole pipe, and you've got access to raw audio files and transcriptions, and what was said, but how do you communicate that to your customers that this is what's happening with that information? And yeah, you do want to be able to feed that audio back in to improve the speech recognition, but you also want to be careful on how you do that. So there's definitely that side of things, and
right. So these
like kind of just to close the cycle, and just on the text to speech coming back. Do I use something like a Poly or a Microsoft, or Google's got some text to speech? Do I use what's built into the browser or the
and whatever? What are the trade-offs? Will I just be able to do text to speech? Will I have background audio that can go along with it? Since again, I'm now in control of this, do I go to a company and hire a voice actor? And can I use their voice model, their output voice model, with SSML or with something? Once you're on your own, you can be way on your own if you want to be. And I think as developers, we are now in a seat where we can say, well, here's what the requirements are, and here's what our options are.
Yep, there's cost, there's trade-offs, whether it be cost or latency,
time,
or perceived latency latency, or there's just all kinds of things that and then it's like, well, we can break the 7-second limitation, but should we break the 7-second limitation?
Or how do we trivially respond faster, but be able to come back and do notifications?
Yep.
Can we do notifications? How do we do notifications? Do we want to do out of
keep the same paradigm of request response, or is it, can we do like something with WebSockets where we're communicating?
Right. How do we don't need to do request response anymore. We can dynamically update search as we're talking.
Yep.
There's all sorts of things that we can do. And I think it's going to be exciting that we'll be exploring that more and more and be able to talk about it more and more, and see, what are the packages that we're using and how do we like it? What are the pitfalls that we saw in trying to use it?
And that's something also, because there are lots of companies that are specializing in each of these different pieces. And sometimes they have a bigger portfolio where they have a number of things together. But do they give you the level of control for programmability that you need or not? Is it something where it's in a different language than you're typically used to using? And so now you have to compile and run it on custom hardware, or is it something that you want to put it in the cloud? And if you've got this custom assistant device that's going to go to different people, then what is the mechanism for updating this device over time? And so now you've got this whole, I've got patches and things that I have to send down to devices, and oh no, do I really want to do that? Do I want more of the code to live actually on the server so that most of the updates happen on the server and are transparent and not very much happens on the client? So, what kind of microphone array do I use in a custom hardware device?
Yeah, again, that's a great point, is, it can get into the hardware. What is, what do we have when it comes to near field audio? What are our, stuff that's off the shelf? What can we be building? If we're building IoT stuff, do we want a microphone built into it? Do we not want a microphone built into it?
Is it
what are the
wired? Is
trade-offs
it
there?
Bluetooth? Is it Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Is it?
You know, what level of Matter compatibility do we need, or do we need thread compatibility, and how do we do that? And
Yeah, some of the concepts I think are going to still be the same. We'll have users and we'll have sessions and we'll have requests and things, but how is it going to change?
yeah,
You know,
well, I think also one of the things that's important is a lot of the design lessons that we've learned, both in terms of UX design and in terms of software design, I think we'll still be able to carry over. You know, so the notions of on the developer side, we're still going to want a way to store context. And how do we store that context? And how do we use that context?
Yeah.
And on the design side, you know, how do we respond? Is it important that we respond? What does, you know, a voice invocation mean? What does a voice response mean? These are lessons that we've been learning, and I hope we've been talking about on the show. And I think one of the interesting challenges for me is kind of, I suggested, is how do I take what I've learned for 5 years and bring it to a completely different platform? App Actions, you know, so Google is moving towards this App Actions platform, which is right now it's mostly voice invocations into existing Android apps. So what makes a good invocation? How do I take those invocations and do something with it? And how do I acknowledge it? What, you know, one of the things that was mentioned at one of Google's presentations in Voice Global was they commented, you know, if you're issuing a voice command to a watch, it's great to provide an audio and a haptic feedback.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's, of course, that makes total sense, but that's something that is easy to overlook if you hadn't been learning those lessons for the past 5 years.
True.
So I'm excited to, you know, there are going to be tons of things that are no longer as useful to me anymore. You know, multivocal, sadly, does not make sense in an app action world, at least not yet. And maybe
it could in a custom assistant world.
You know, but how will it work in a custom assistant world? How do I finish the Alexa integration and get that out there?
Yep.
What are the lessons that I can take from multivocal? Even if I can't take multivocal, what are the lessons that we've taken about outtents and apply them to this new world?
Yep.
And I'm excited. A little nervous, but I'm excited.
Yeah. Things are changing. It's not necessarily an end of an era, but it's an evolution of the technology and the platforms and you know, and new platforms and ideas and approaches to things. And
yeah,
as we do as developers, we're constantly learning something new, and that's kind of the wave that we're going to need to ride and just, you know, learn and pick up but the things that we learn are going to be able to help us with what we're doing in the future.
As Brett said, I think Google's action, what Google has done is definitely marking the end of the beginning in voice. We're moving out of that phase, and we're very clearly moving into the next phase. And I think what's important is that we take the lessons that we've learned from that first phase and bring them into the next one. That we don't require everyone to relearn all the mistakes that we've made.
Yes.
And I kind of hope that's what we've done with this show. And what we'll keep doing is highlighting our mistakes and highlighting those lessons learned and helping people, you know, not have to learn them themselves the hard way.
Yeah, and we'll just explore together what this new world looks like, and just keep pushing the envelope on voice and making it the best that it can, and that's what we'll catch on future episodes of Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Congratulations on 100 episodes, Mark.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Looking forward, and I am sincerely looking forward to the next 100 episodes as well.
Me too. Take care.
Take care.